Hey guys, welcome back to Sparkman Homestead. Here is another Meals of the Week video for you. So the very first meal we are going to make on today's video, it is a sweet corn pie, and it turned out really, really delicious. We took it for leftovers the next day and it was just amazing, or we had it for leftovers. Steven took it to work with him. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna get started with using 4 cups of fresh or thawed corn kernels. I just used my canned corn. I used 2 pints of it, worked amazing. Then you're gonna come in and add about 1 medium clove of garlic minced, and if you want to, 1 cup of finely chopped yellow onion. I just used my granulated onion. I just topped it up with a little bit of granulated garlic also, just to add a little bit of extra garlic kick to it. Then to the bowl, you're going to add 2/3 cup of milk. I used a whole milk, but the recipe did state that you can use a plant-based milk if you want to. You're going to add 1.5 cups of cheese and half a cup of breadcrumbs with some salt and pepper. The recipe also suggests using chives with this. You're gonna get everything all stirred together. After you get those ingredients mixed really well, you are going to stir in 3 eggs. I also forgot to mention at the beginning, I do have my oven preheated at 375 degrees, and it does suggest to move the rack to the middle position and lightly butter your pie plate that you are going to use. I just used an avocado oil just to coat my pie plate, and it worked really, really well. So you're going to pour that mixture into your pie plate, and definitely I'm going to suggest putting it onto a baking sheet. I am so happy I did that because this does boil over a little bit. So to save yourself a mess in the oven, put it on a lined baking sheet. You're gonna take about half a tablespoon of butter and you are going to just melt that, and then you are going to combine half a cup of breadcrumbs, half a cup of cheese, and then if you are using it, half a tablespoon of chives, some salt, and some pepper. I wanted to add a little additional flavor to mine, so I came in and added probably about half a teaspoon to a teaspoon of smoked paprika. You wanna get that really well stirred so that everything is good and combined, and then you are going to evenly coat the top of your pie with that coating. You're gonna cook this for about 35 minutes until it is slightly puffed and set and it begins to brown. It says cool for 5 to 10 minutes before serving, and then if you want, you can top it with an additional amount of chives. Mine took a little bit longer than 35 minutes to cook because the center was still a little bit jiggly, so I probably say about 45 minutes, but it really will depend on your oven. So with that corn pie, I wanted to make a really simple meatloaf to go with it. I had some venison that I wanted to get used up. I have left the recipe linked for kind of my inspiration on how I make my meatloaf. I have an original recipe, but I've definitely made it kind of work for what we like to have in it. I took about 1 pound of venison there, and I added a 1/4 cup of my barbecue sauce that I just recently made. It is a cowboy candy brine barbecue sauce. Amazing. It is such a good barbecue sauce. I will leave that video linked for you guys. If you can up cowboy candy and you have extra brine left over, this recipe is such a good way to get that used. So I wanted to use some of that barbecue sauce in here. So I added a 1/4 cup into here. I added about, I would say maybe half a cup of breadcrumbs, some Worcestershire sauce, some garlic. I also added 1 egg, about 1/4 cup of shredded cheddar cheese, some salt and pepper, and then just some seasonings like dried oregano and thyme. And then I'm forming this into a loaf shape. I normally make it in my like bread pan, my Pyrex loaf pan. I find that the grease just kind of sits in it, and I'm never happy with the results of it. So I decided with this one, I was going to just form it onto the baking sheet, and it turned out way, way better. So once I get it formed, I'm gonna just put about 2 tablespoons of that barbecue sauce on top of it, and we're gonna put that in a 350 degree oven for about 40 to 45 minutes. So you see there that I was just taking the pie in and out because I was just kind of doing a shake test on it. Mine took about 45 minutes in total to cook. So that was this meal. It was really, really delicious. Definitely recommend this corn pie. If you love corn on the cob, this is amazing, and it is a really good way to get to use your canned up goods. That same night, I was kind of craving something sweet. I hadn't started any of my Christmas baking yet, so I didn't have anything sweet made. So I decided that I was going to make a hot fudge pudding cake. This recipe was so simple to make. So you want to preheat your oven to 350 degrees and heat a pot of water on the stove until it is very hot. So just add a simmer. I just used my electric kettle and just got some water heated up. You also want to get 1/3 cup of a butter melted. So in a large bowl, you are going to add 3/4 cup of a granulated sugar. I just used a white sugar. You're going to add 1 cup of all-purpose flour, 1/4 cup of cocoa, 2 teaspoons of baking powder, 1/4 teaspoon of salt. And then you just want to stir that until that is all combined thoroughly. Then you are going to take 1/2 cup of milk. I just used a whole milk in this. Your 1/3 cup of your melted butter, 1.5 teaspoons of a vanilla extract, and then you want to mix that until it is nice and smooth. So then you're going to get a 9-inch square baking pan buttered. I just used some butter and just lightly buttered it. You can use a cooking spray on this as well. Once your mixture is completely combined, you are going to pour that batter into the baking pan. In a small bowl, you want to stir together 1/2 cup of white sugar, 1/2 cup of brown sugar, and 1/4 cup of cocoa. And you're going to mix that really, really well. Then you're going to take that mixture and sprinkle it evenly over top of the batter in your dish. And then you're going to take your hot water. So you need 1 1/4 cup of hot water, and you are going to pour that over top. Do not want to stir this at all. You're going to bake this for 35 to 40 minutes if you're using a glass dish. If you are using like a metal pan, it says to cook for 30 to 35 minutes until the center is almost set. Then you want to remove this dish from the oven and allow it to sit for 15 minutes. This cake is so delicious. Like, the cake is on top and then it has a delicious fudgy sauce on the bottom of it. It also suggests topping it with some vanilla ice cream, which if I had it, I probably would have had it on top of this. For the next meal, I made kind of a what do I have in my cupboard? Let's throw it in a crock pot and see if it works. That was the style of this meal. So I had this sauce that I had picked up from a local Amish and I needed to get it used. So I took a pound, or not, it was probably over a pound, it was probably almost 2 pounds of turkey breast, and I just cut it into 3 equal pieces, and then I just seasoned it really lightly with some salt and pepper on both sides of it, and I put it in my crock pot. Now, I thought I had my camera turned on for the next part of the video, but obviously I did not. So what I did is, after I got the turkey breast in the crock pot, I took that whole bottle of that seasoning or sauce mix and just dumped it over top of all of the turkey breast. I took a jar or can of artichoke hearts, dumped that in, and then I took about 1/2 a jar of sun-dried tomatoes and dumped that in. I stirred it all together so that the turkey breasts were good and coated with that sauce. I turned the crock pot on to low and then let it cook for 4 hours. After 4 hours, I took a jar of my canned potatoes. I like to rinse my canned potatoes off because I find that they get a little bit of a starchy taste to them, so I like to have them rinsed off and it makes them taste a little bit better. I also can my potatoes in really big chunks, and I didn't want to have those huge chunks in the crock pot, so I was cutting them up to more manageable sizes. If you do not have canned potatoes, you can definitely use fresh potatoes in this. Just dice them up and put them in. You're probably gonna have to cook it for a little bit longer than an hour. I would say maybe like an hour and a half, just to make sure that the potatoes are good and cooked through. So once I got all the potatoes cut up, I just stirred them into the crock pot and I let that cook for I think another hour. And then after the hour, I came in with a little bit of shredded smoked cheddar cheese. I picked this cheddar cheese up from Azure Standard and it is amazing. It is so good. So I just was cutting a little piece off. I buy my cheese from Azure in 5-pound blocks, and this is what I do just to make them last longer. I cut a little piece off that I want to shred up, and then I put this little covering. I got these from IKEA. They're just like a silicone, almost a replacement for plastic wrap, and I just picked it up. They come in 3 different sizes, and that is what I use to actually put on top of my cheese. cheese, and it makes it last. I think in my Azure standard video, I said it lasts for usually 5 months without going moldy in the fridge. It is amazing. You just have to minimally touch it. So anyways, after I shredded all of that cheese up, I just topped the casserole, we're gonna call it a casserole, the crock-pot meal with that cheese, and then I just put the lid on and I left it just sit with no heat on it for about 5 minutes just to melt that cheese. On the side, I was getting a can of my green beans heated up to have on the side with this meal. For a meal that I had no clue how it was gonna turn out, and I literally just took components from my cabinets, it turned out really, really delicious. That sauce had a little bit of a little spicy kick to it, so it worked really, really well with the turkey. I love doing my turkey in the crock pot. I find that it makes it taste a little bit more tender because turkey can easily get dried out very quickly. So crock pot is usually how I end up making my turkeys, but this turned out delicious. For the next meal, we are gonna make a delicious stuffed shell. Now this recipe is a Pioneer Woman recipe, and I believe it comes from the same book that I actually referenced last week in my video. It was from a couple cookbooks that I got from the library. I did find the recipe online though, so I have left it in the video description. It is called the red green stuffed shell. Now I did go off of the recipe in a couple of different areas, so I'm just gonna explain to you guys how I did it, and then if you wanna see the actual original recipe, again, linked below for you guys. It is a meatless meal, but I did want to incorporate a little bit of protein into it, so I just took a pound of ground turkey and just ground it up. I also took a 10-ounce bag of frozen spinach and just put it in my microwave and completely thawed it out. To my ground turkey, I added a little bit of garlic and some granulated onion and just cooked that all together. Then you want to take a 12-ounce package of jumbo pasta shells. It says about 25 to 30 shells, and you want to cook them slightly and a little bit firmer than al dente. So once my turkey was all completely cooked through, I just set that aside. There's my noodles. I'm just rinsing them off just to get some of that starch off. So in a medium-sized saucepan, you want to take 4 tablespoons of butter and melt that, and then you're going to slowly whisk in 1/4 cup of all-purpose flour. You want to cook that for a minute or two until the flour gets nice and brown and smells really nice and nutty. And then you're going to slowly whisk in 2.5 cups of milk. You want to whisk out any lumps that are in there as you're going along. You're going to cook that white sauce until it is thickened. It says about 4 to 5 minutes. Then in a separate bowl, you want to mix together 30 ounces of whole milk ricotta cheese. This is just some ricotta cheese that I had made earlier in the day. And then 1 cup of grated Parmesan cheese. And then you want to add a little bit of parsley and a little bit of basil and 1 whole large egg. I just pre-whisked it before I put it in there. So now that the sauce is done, I'm going to take it off of the heat and I'm going to add in a little bit of basil, parsley, and salt and pepper. It does mention if your sauce is a little bit too thick, you can actually come in and add a 1/4 cup of milk to it just to thin it out a little bit. So once I added everything into the sauce, I set it aside and I'm getting my ricotta mixture all together. This is going to be the mixture that you're going to stuff your shells with. So once everything was incorporated, I added my pre-cooked spinach to that. If you are using fresh spinach, you just want to lightly saute it a little bit before you add it into here. I'm adding a little bit more salt and pepper, and then I added my pre-cooked turkey to this as well. So you just want to get everything stirred together and mixed in really well. The other thing that I had in my fridge that I needed to get used was I had a little bit of tomato sauce left over, so I wanted to add that into the white sauce. I thought it would give it a little extra kick to it. Next, you want to get your shells all stuffed. So I took a little bit of the sauce and just coated a 9x13 pan. After I got started stuffing all of these shells, I realized that this was going to be way too much for us to have for one meal plus leftovers. So I stuffed all of them and just left them in the 9x13. And then I actually took a 9-inch cake pan and just put a little sauce on the bottom of it and then just put some of the shells into that. And then in a freezer container or like a takeaway container, I ended up making a second batch with those shells. So I actually got 2 meals out of 1 for us. There's just the 2 of us right now. The kids aren't here yet. If you are cooking for like a large like potluck or like a larger family, then this 1 serving would be fine. But for us, just 2 of us, this was way too much food. Even with that 9-inch pan, we still had leftovers for both of us the next day. So I was super happy that I actually got a freezer meal out of this, and the recipe actually does state that this is an excellent freezer meal. That's the only reason I really decided to do that. So I'm just taking everything and just transferring them to the individual dishes. Once you get everything in those dishes, you're going to take that sauce and you're going to just top it with the sauce. The one that I was putting in the oven, I put a little extra Parmesan cheese on top of that. I probably put about half a cup of Parmesan cheese extra on top. And then you want to have your oven preheated at 375 degrees, and you want to bake this for about 25 to 30 minutes until it is nice, hot, and bubbly. This recipe was very delicious with the white sauce, but I, and Stephen did agree with me, it would taste amazing if it had like a marinara sauce on it. Oh, the other thing too is probably because I divided it into 2 different things, it wasn't saucy enough for us. So when I do take it out of the freezer, I am going to top it up with a little bit of extra marinara sauce, but it is definitely an amazing meal. For the last meal of the video, we are going to make a hamburger soup. Both Steve and I did not feel 100% great on this particular night, and it's been really cold, so I thought soup would have been a perfect option for this night. It definitely was. Turned out amazing. So we are going to first of all start with a pound of ground beef. You could probably get away with using ground chicken. Ground turkey would probably be amazing in this as well. So I'm just gonna get my beef all chopped up, and then I'm gonna come in and season it with some salt, pepper, a little bit of minced garlic, and then a little bit of granulated onion. You can use fresh onion in this if you would like. We're gonna get that all cooked and browned up, and then I'm taking a jar of my canned potatoes, just getting them rinsed off. As I said earlier, I like to rinse them off just to get that starch taste off of it. So I'm gonna add them to the pot. I'm also going to add a can of my canned carrots, a can of my canned corn. There's a lot of cans in this. This meal was amazing. I got to use so many things for my pantry. It made me feel so happy making this because it came together so quickly. So once I got the corn and the carrots rinsed off, I'm gonna add them to the ground beef and potatoes, and then I'm gonna come in and add about 5 cups of a beef broth. If you have fresh vegetables, definitely use this in it. Your cooking times would be a little bit different than mine. I'm gonna add another 15-ounce can of my diced tomatoes, and then I'm gonna come in with a 15-ounce can of, or jar, I keep saying can, I mean jar, of tomato sauce, and we're just gonna stir that all in. I'm topping it up with a little bit of salt and pepper and probably 1 to 2 tablespoons of Worcestershire sauce. You really can never have too much Worcestershire. It tastes delicious. So you're gonna get this all stirred together, and all you need to do is just heat this until it is completely cooked through. I also wanted to add a little bit extra herbs to it, so I came in and added a little bit of my homemade Italian seasoning blend. It's just a herb blend, and then I did another taste test, and it needed a little bit more salt because my broth is unsalted. It needed a little bit more Worcestershire, and I decided to add a little bit of kick to it, so I put some red chili flakes in it, and this soup was so delicious. It took literally 15 minutes at max to make. It was perfect for me not feeling well. I didn't really want to cook a lot, and it just was, it hit the spot perfect. I'm actually thinking in the future of making this and canning it up because it would be a perfect canned soup just to be able to heat and serve. We topped it with a little bit of that smoked cheddar cheese, and it just was, again, it was delicious. So that is the last meal on this video. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and I hope I gave you a little inspiration for your upcoming week. I also want to wish you guys a Merry Christmas if you celebrate it, and I hope you guys have a great day or night whenever you're watching this, and I will see you on the next video. Bye guys.